What's up, Crew Coach? Welcome to the Money Masterclass. Now, look, this masterclass about money is probably not what you think it is. And I'll tell you what we're kind of not going to talk about is some of those traditional money insights like budgeting, investments, savings accounts, how to shift your money around and where to spend your money to make it go the furthest. Like, look, that stuff's all very well important, but you can find that information out anywhere. Your bank has those type of resources. Those types of trainings and insights about how to manage your money, you can find anywhere. What I'm going to talk about here in the masterclass is about the career, the touring crew career, and your money relative to it. We're going to go over understanding your real money needs because we're building a career here and we need you to actually be able to do the entry work, the entry level work, the mid-level work, the advanced level stuff. And we need you to be able to get involved and in the game as much as possible. And money needs to not be a block for you. Okay. So we're going to get you to the point where you're going to understand your real money needs by the end of this, okay? We're going to also understand the income of the opportunities that you actually have, like the real income and how to make the work for you, okay? Relative to income. We're also going to talk about understanding pay scales. We're going to talk about understanding how to negotiate your rates and raises and things like that. Sound good? Cool. All right. So let's dive into this. I want to try to keep this real straightforward. I'm hoping to not spend an hour in this masterclass, but however long it does take, I just want to say that you're going to be very grateful that you have this understanding. Some of this stuff that I'm going to share with you might not be directly applicable. Some of it definitely will, but all of this is going to be a resource and a tool that you're going to have in your toolbox. By the end of this, you're going to be very grateful that you stayed on and watched this and actually took this masterclass. Okay, so the first thing that I want to talk about is knowing your real current money needs. All right, really knowing your numbers. Now, you might be thinking, Kenny, I know exactly how much I need to make. I need to make freaking, $8,000 a month to live my life. And listen, if that's the case, you've probably got something going on because I got to tell you, I've lived in Los Angeles, I've lived in Manhattan, I've lived in London, three of the most expensive cities in the world. And I didn't need $8,000 a month to live there. Okay. And I didn't live cheap either. My wife and I, we designated like $2,500 a month for rent in these places, as well as living and a variety of other bills. I've always had my phone bills and I've always had other bills as well. And you definitely don't need $8,000 a month to live in these places. Okay. And so, that should be a relief to some of you. But here's what I mean by knowing your real numbers, okay? This is very important. And I'll give you an example first so you can kind of understand what I'm talking about. Because oftentimes we do this to ourselves. Money, the thought of money has so much weight. Am I right? Like, it is so heavy to think that we have money constraints, money needs, bills seem heavy. Like, they're just, numbers in a computer and they're just paper bills or whatever, but they actually have emotional weight to them. And that's the stuff that I want to kind of get out in the open right now, okay? Because if you don't know your numbers, your real numbers, it's going to be very difficult for you to transition into this career, to really take the time to get the experience that you really need so you can move your career forward and one day get to travel the world on tour doing the work that you love so you can really tap into the aliveness of this career. And money is a big contributing factor. You know what I mean by the weight of money, the feel of the weight of that money? So here's what I mean. I'll tell you a story real quick about my brother. Now, my brother is a basketball coach, okay? He's an independent basketball trainer. He trains like pro league basketball players, college basketball players, but on the regular, he coaches youth. He's a youth basketball coach. Now, not for a school, for rec, for the side. And so he's really kind of always having to hustle up new students and new players and new pro level clients and stuff. And so money to him can be very heavy, like the rest of us, thinking that, man, I gotta like really, my actions need to influence how much money I make, which is absolutely true. Our actions do influence how much money we make. We go and we spend our time for money, unless you've got investments, right? But we're not talking about investments here, okay? We're strictly talking about career. So my brother, I was at his house one day, and I was like, well, Billy is his name, Billy Barnwell. I said, Billy, like, dude, how much money do you actually need every month? And he's like, dude, I need $6,500 a month. I'm like, $6,500 a month? And, you know, he's got a mortgage on his house, and he's got, you know, well, actually his oldest son is now 18. So he's starting to leave the house and make his own income. And his wife, my brother's wife, has a really good salary job, you know. And, but I'm like, you need $6,500 a month. He's like, yeah, dude, like, I need $6,500 a month. I'm like, well, where does this number come from? $6,500 a month. And he was like, well, I mean, it's just like what I've been really shooting for. That's what I need to kind of live my life. I'm like, really? Well, can we break this down? Because remember, money can be very emotionally heavy. And if you think that you have to make $6,500 a month, you can imagine the pressure it can create trying to hustle up $6,500 a month every month, you know? Especially as an independent basketball coach. So we got out a sheet of paper and we started writing down his numbers. You know, fortunately, his mortgage wasn't rent. So his mortgage that he's had for a long time was only like $800 or $835. Then there was the insurance, and, you know, then there was health insurance, and then there was food for his dogs, and then groceries, and then cell phone bill. And we started really adding this up. And it comes to find out my brother actually, just by himself, if not including his wife's income, he had an overhead to live his current lifestyle. It was like $3,800 or $3,600 a month. Now you can imagine the difference of $6,500 a month and 36 to pay his minimum. Now, obviously, we want to make more than just our minimums, but that's what he was feeling like emotionally he had to make every month. He was like, I got to make $6,500 a month. Man, that's pretty dang heavy. You know, if you feel like I have to make $6,500 a month or I can't live my current circumstances, that's a really heavy feeling. And so we literally were able to take thousands of dollars of weight, emotional weight, off of what he felt like he really needed, because he'd never really done the math. Like, he was just like, well, I've been making $6,500, so I need to make $6,500. But he never really did the math, which means it also influenced his spending habits, you know, all of those things, because he felt like he had to make that amount of money. But then we found out that he really only needed to make $3,600, or I think it was $3,600, maybe $3,800. And so then what we ended up doing in his business was we broke it down to how many students he needs to sign up to his basketball training program, how many pro level one-on-ones does he need to sign up. And we broke it down to literally like actionable steps to where, oh man, I literally thought I needed like 20 more students and 10 more one-on-ones. And now I don't have to bear that emotional weight. You see what I'm saying? And so if you don't know your number and you're just kind of arbitrary going, I need 4,000, I need 5,000 a month, I need 6,000 a month, I need 8,000 a month, you're really doing yourself a disservice by not knowing the math, not knowing your real numbers. Because aside from the actual numbers themselves and the actual money needs, the income needs, it's heavy. It's emotionally heavy. And so we really need you guys to do your math. Like, what do you really need from a baseline? And I want you guys to do this. And we're not going to do this live here in the masterclass because this is more of a lecture, but I want you to tonight, tomorrow, immediately write down every bill, every real need from a minimum. Don't over and embellish this because that you're adding emotional weight. Don't put what you would like to have, put what you really need. Like really break it down. Your rent or your mortgage. What's your insurance? Car payment, car insurance, cell phone bill. How much money for food do you want to, are you spending? Are you actually spending? Not just how much you'd like to spend, but like, what are you actually spending? Netflix, Hulu, some of those little bills, right? Start to add those up because you might find that like, oh, I need to make 4,000 a month, but really you needed to make 35, right? Really you needed to make 5,000, or you think that you need to make 5,000. And by the way, 5,000, like I've been able to live in New York, LA, London for less than 4,000 or around 4,000 or less a month. Okay. In some of those expensive cities. Dead serious, do the math. And so I just want to impress upon you the emotional weight behind that. And when you can really know your math and know your numbers, your actual numbers, it can really empower you as you go to start to try to find work opportunities, move into this career so you can make sense of what you're actually doing and why you're actually doing it. So you can really do it, so you can make it work for you, which we're going to talk about in this kind of next section is making the work. But you got to get your priorities in check. And so I am not necessarily one of those money guys that are like, listen, live well below your means, you know, all of that. And the reason why is because I don't want anyone to, especially in the early stages of building your financial fitness, to definitely live way above their means. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is you're going to really need to get your priorities in check. What are things that really matter to you? The things that you really need for you to not just live your life happy, but live your life inspired so you can aspire to build this touring crew career. Something that my wife and I have done in our lives is there are things that we like to have from a comfort standpoint, from a living standpoint. Okay. It's why we budget, you know, $2,500 a month for rent. All right. Sometimes we get lucky in some of these areas to where we pay less. And depending on what we want to pull from, maybe we spend a little more based on some of those needs. But my mentality with this is instead of me thinking about money from a standpoint of lack, because there is so much money out there, by the way, I like to let my lifestyle push me. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to sit there and drive some clunky old beater up car that's unreliable, but I'm also not going to go buy a Tesla because I don't want to, you know, push myself to that degree just yet in my life. But I do want to have a decent, safe ride that's nice enough, quality enough, something that I'm happy to have my family in, but it forces me to step up to the plate to afford it. You know what I mean? Same thing with the quality of life that we live in our rental properties that we have. We make sure that instead of living in some, you know, below our means neighborhood where we walk outside and it's not safe, we're uninspired to live there and all of that, we just say, hey, look, yeah, like here's our budget, but the reason why we have this is because it will inspire us to take the right actions to make the money that we need, the income that we need. And that way we can say no to things that aren't serving us, so we can say yes to the right things. That's the importance of getting your real numbers and getting your priority in check. So you can get rid of the things that you've been wasting money on and not appropriating the right funds, so you can actually put them towards things that inspire you to want to go out there and move the needle forward. Bills will never stop, ever. You're an adult now. Sorry. Bills will never stop. And knowing that bills will never stop and your desires for growth never stops, because if you're not desiring growth, you're dying in life, okay? So you will always desire growth and your bills will never stop, right? So you want to make sure that you're not just taking things to pay bills. That's why you're building a career here. because, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, is this career will afford you everything that you want in your life. There's not a lot of positions as you get moving forward in this career that make less than like 75, 85,000 a year on up to 140 grand a year or more. If you're a tour manager on some of these, and tour and production manager on some of these big gigs, you can certainly make 150 plus thousand a year. And so that's what you're working towards. There's going to be plenty enough income for where you're headed. But if in the early stages you don't get your priorities in check and you don't know your numbers, the weight of which all of this is will force you to think, oh shoot, I got to go and just pay bills. Okay, so we need to get you in the right frame of mind here, and that's kind of why I wanted to share that. Is what do you really need every month? Like really, what do you really need every month? Is it 2,000? Is it 3,000? Right? And then we need to make the work work. So our goal here when we're building this career is ultimately, if you, let's just say that you're living by yourself, you know, your goal here is to replace your current income, right? Like you need to like make that a goal to where I can full-time work in the event business. I can full-time work in production. I'll tell you this, now, when I first started as a stagehand, I obviously didn't have much overhead at all. I was living in my van, and, you know, cell phones and all that stuff back then wasn't even a thing. It was all prepaid stuff, and the phone was huge. And anyways, point was, I didn't have a lot of overhead, but I'll tell you, I busted my ass as a stagehand in Atlanta, non-union, so I was making the lowest rates you can imagine. And I remember my first year, I pulled in over 50K. As a stagehand. Now, you might not think that that's a lot, but that's a lot, man. I mean, school teachers only make 35 to 45,000 a year oftentimes. I mean, people that work regular type jobs make 45,000 a year or 50,000 a year. I mean, I was doing that as a stagehand at the bottom level back in the early 2000s, in 2002. You can do this absolutely when your priorities are in check and you know your numbers, okay? So the goal needs to be, I'm gonna replace my current income, ultimately, because I need to be in production and events, ultimately full-time. Now, you might not be able to do that at the start. It's probably gonna be initially a part-time thing. Do it on the side as your second gig, third gig, something like that. But like as soon as you start making the money with the events, like start dropping off those other jobs, those JOBs, for these career growth opportunities to be able to really start to get in there and do the work that you love, because it will pay enough. And we're going to get there in a minute, but it will absolutely pay enough. Now, and I will say, if you have a spouse to support you, like you might go, well, I got the rent and blah, 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 blah. I'm the man, so I want to afford everything and take care of my spouse. Like, the reality is like, hey man, there's going to be a period of time here soon where you're going to be able to make plenty of money. And you got to know that. You got to really, really understand and believe that. And so getting your spouse to support you, maybe you've got roommates to help offset some of those rental costs to bring those real monthly numbers down. But like, get some support so you can make it work. And I'm not talking about support meaning someone literally paying bills for you, but I'm just saying, like, if you got a roommate situation, or your spouse, like bring them in on this growth journey of yours, because one day you will be able to support both of you just fine and then some. But even better when you can bring it together, and again, with the same thing with the roommate situation, to where they can offset some of those initial costs, bring your monthly down, because then it will open you up. Like, there's no reason why you have to work a job to make the overages, okay? There's no reason why you have to work a job to make the overages of your monthly. Because right now, what we want you to do is to be able to really get in there and replace your current income with the production work, with the event work. It's important, okay? So the next thing I want you to really understand is your pay rates and scales in some of these these entry points as you go. So if our goal is to know our monthly numbers, our real monthly numbers, our priorities are in check, we are shooting to replace our current JOB income with event income, okay, completely. At some point, you're going to need to leave that regular job, that bill paying job for your career job, your career work, I should say. And then, of course, you got either roommates or you got your spouse on board or whatever to help understand and offset some of that cost and support. Let's talk about like what that could look like for you in some of these entry roles. Okay, so let's just say like me, I started as a stagehand. Okay, well, as a stagehand or a local, whether it be like local security or something like that, you usually get paid in minis. Okay, what that means is there's like 4-hour minis, 6-hour minis. There's opportunity for overtime where you end up getting time and a half on top of this. But here's what that looks like. Let's just say that you go and you do a load in and you do a 4-hour mini. Okay, that means that you will get paid for the 4 hours. All right. Now, if it's a concert, you're going to get concert rate for 4 hours. If it's corporate rate is a bit different, and then you will get corporate rate for those 4 hours. Okay. Now, understand that it might not take you all of those 4 hours to do the work. So for instance, you may go do a loadout and you get paid for 4 hours, but it only takes you like an hour and a half. Okay. So really you made more hourly than the actual work required. And the reason why that matters is because time's so valuable. You can utilize your time, like especially, let's just say that your second gig, your transition into this is like, I'm an Uber driver. Okay. That's something that you can independently turn on and off and make work. Well, you could go do a 4-hour load in, work as an Uber driver, and then come back and do a loadout, still get paid for the 4 hours. You only did an hour and a half of work, and then even turn your app back on. Next thing you know, you just had a $200-300 day. I mean, that's the reality of this, okay? And why that matters is because you know your actual numbers. It matters is because it's feeding the goal of ultimately replacing your JOB income with your career income, your event income, okay? But I remember when I first started, I was at like bottom of the pay scale in Atlanta, and it was like $10.50 an hour. Okay, I'm doing some math on my calculator. So it was like $10.50 an hour, and let's just say I were to do 2 4-hour minis. Okay, and so multiply that by 8 hours. Now I might not have worked all 8 of those hours, but I just brought home $84. Okay. Now, depending on what you're, you can do this. Let's just say you did this for 5 days a week. Now, especially in most busy cities during the busy season, you certainly could work that much. Now, multiply that out. You made $420 in a week. Times for the whole month, you made $1,680. Now, look, stagehand work is something that you can turn into full-time, because I'll tell you this, I was doing some of these where I would go and do a 4-hour mini for this company, do another 4-hour midday mini, and then another mini for a loadout, right? And that ended up bumping my rates up. Now, my rates for some of these were different. $10.50 an hour was concert rate. $12.50 an hour at the time was corporate rate. But now these rates have gone way up. And here's the thing. Unless you're in like Tulsa, Oklahoma, or somewhere like that, the rents, the cost of living and everything is relative. And so even back then, where I could literally make $1,600 in a month, and I remember like renting my first place, it was like super cheap. I was probably paying $600-700 a month. Food and all that stuff was relatively cheap. Gas and stuff, I was getting by, but like, I was able to live at that time as a stagehand. Now rates are relative, so they've gone up. The baseline pay for most cities is at least $1,550 in most cases, unless you're in an area that's, like I said, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, or something like that, or where it's relative to the area, but also there's 6-hour minis that are often negotiated in the corporate world. And so this is baseline stuff, okay? So you can absolutely make $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 in a month as a local crew stagehand. And if you're spending up more than $4,000 in a month, take home, there's probably something wrong with your priorities. You know, as I was telling you guys before, we lived in London, LA, and Manhattan, and we didn't have to spend that much money. I mean, we had $2,500 one-bedroom place in Midtown Manhattan, and then of course all the rest of the things, and that was expensive. You know, that was expensive at the time. And so anyways, I'm just talking about this from baseline entry-level type of stuff. Then there's overtime and bigger pay. Sometimes you might go and do a corporate rate. It's like, oh, it's 20 bucks an hour, 24 bucks an hour. Like there's a lot of that stuff these days. Back when I was doing it, there was almost very little to none of that stuff. And then sometimes you might get these day rate opportunities when you're working these local gigs that are like $150, $250 in a day to be like a specialized stagehand or on a corporate gig or something. They're out there. But I'm just putting that in the perspective of it's enough to be able to work it. I remember I'd done some Uber driving, some Uber Eats driving, some Lyft driving, and you have to do a lot of hours out there to bring home $100, $150. I mean, you'd be lucky to spend a full day after all of the fees and stuff to bring home that amount of money, you know, before taxes. And so the event business has the same amount of income opportunities as a lot of these other JOBs. Why wouldn't you do this type of work if you want to be in the event business on the entry than any other type of work? Because you can. It's just, you got to know your numbers, your real monthly numbers. You got to get your priorities in check. You got to have your income goal of replacing it. And you need to make sure that you have as much support as possible. Roommates, spouse. If you're by yourself, that's fine. You know your numbers. You're not living way above your means. You're certainly not living so low above your means to where it's not inspiring to want to go and move the career needle forward in the early days. But we're also not talking about staying here very long in your career at these fiscal levels. We're also talking about growing, right? Moving on from this phase of your career to bigger monies. In merch selling, it's usually a flat rate plus tips. You might make in merch, you might be a merch seller and you might make $125, $150, $200 in a show. You might be able to make, you know, anywhere from $400 to $600 in a weekend doing merch, you know, and sometimes more. I know we recently, I did a show and we allowed tips at our merch seller. The merch seller walked away with like almost $2,000 because they were hustling up tips, plus the $150 we paid them. We're like, whoa, what? But that is the case. And so there's money to be made in the entry of this career. There's money to be made in the entry of this career. Now let's talk about the other type of entry, which is the company salary. Let's just say that you work for a Live Nation or a production company or something like that, where you're getting your entry-level experience with a company where they're giving you a base salary. Okay, there it is. That's all you need. Like a base salary should be enough. But let's just say that like your base salary for working 5 days a week at some production company is barely enough and you'd like more. Well, you certainly could fill it up with, like I said, Uber or Lyft or something, or some of these other local crew type positions and event positions, because it gets you in the mix, it keeps you in the game, it's a lot more fulfilling, and hey, it pays your bills while you're doing the work in the industry that you're going to ultimately build a really great financial future in. So what is your base monthly number? Is it 3,000? Is it 2,500? Is it 4,000? Is it 45,000? Like really, what is it? Because then let's just say that you need $4,000 every month okay, to live the life that you're living right now. All right, let's multiply that out by 12. You need to take home 48 grand. Okay, 48 grand. That's it. That's not too difficult to do if you needed 4,000 bucks a month. It's not too difficult to do in any of these entry type positions. I mean, even the entry in, you know, some of these production companies and stuff like that will absolutely pay you that. Okay, so I just want you to wrap your head around this, because the whole point of this money masterclass is to get you to understand the value of the money that you're making so you can be in this career at every level. Okay, we are going to talk about some advanced stuff here in this next topic, but I just wanted to drive that home for you. Know your monthly numbers, really do your math. Okay, don't embellish. I know that you want more and you'll get more, but we're talking about you understanding money so you can actually put in the right actions and move through some of these lower financial needs and get you up to a real living proper wage beyond all of this. Because like I said, where you guys are headed on tour, there is tremendous money to be made. Okay, tremendous money to be made. The next thing I want you to understand is how to negotiate your tour raise and your rate. So assuming that we're through the entry stage, we've got a salary that we've made, or we've made enough as a weekend merch seller or as a stagehand, we're making enough, we're in the event business, we're working to pay our bills, and we're taking our experience to the tour level. We're reaching out to tour merch companies. We're reaching out to management companies to become tour managers. We're reaching out to production companies, audio companies, this, that, or the other. Now, these companies are going to give you your living wage. Now, what is a living wage? It's different for everyone. You might be in Tulsa. You might be in Texas. You might be in Tampa. I don't know why I use all T's there, but anyways, my point is it all is relative to where you're living, what lifestyle that you need and want that keeps you inspired to want to go after it. It's really up to you. And you got to get your priorities in check as far as needing making a living wage. But regardless, you will be able to negotiate your salary to some degree as you move into these next phases of your career. And so one thing that you're going to want to know is your day rate. All right. And how you do that is, if you're in a company and you make a salary, literally divide it by 7, work your way back, and you can figure out what your day rate that you're making. Because sometimes these tours that you're going to be working on, they're going to ask you what your rate is or what your day rate is, and you can kind of start there by understanding that. But it's just doing your math backwards. Maybe you've been a local merch seller and you can say, well, I'm typically at 150, but always, because of travel, add an extra $100. Okay, it's just a good common practice. Add an extra $100 and be like, well, I'm actually at 250, minimum, because this will be your kind of entry point into the negotiations. Now, maybe you're just not at least that's your minimum, rather, right? You've probably heard me talk about this before, but if you're not 100% sure what you should ask for on your tour, like maybe you've been offered a tour and you're just not 100% certain, because I'll tell you this, and I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but I'll talk about it now. There is no industry standards in this business. Like in the tour world, there's no industry standards. As much as the unions would love to try to chokehold this, there is no industry standards but your own standards. That's why it's so important to know your numbers. And that's really about knowing your worth, is because there's so much more compensation than just monetary. I'll get there, but it's important to know your numbers so you can know what your minimum is. And your minimum is usually what your current day rate would be. And so if you reach out to these companies, they may just have a budget, especially the companies like sound, lighting, video, these different companies, they'll oftentimes just say, well, our budget is X. Like, this is what we have. Now, if you're just getting going and touring is your thing, you're going to be like, oh, that's awesome. Like, I'll take that, because let's just say that you know, you get on with an audio company and their entry level pay to send somebody out on tour is $150 a day. And you might be thinking, $150 a day, that doesn't sound like very much money, but it's every day that you're out. Okay. Now, if you go out for 60 days because you're on a 2-month tour, let's just do the math. 150 times 60, that's $9 grand. Okay. In 60 days, plus they pay you per diem, and per diem is at least 25 a day, up to 50 a day, but let's just go on the low end. So let's just say plus 25 a day times 60. You know, you're making over $5 grand a month, even at 150 a day with per diem and everything in this case instance. Okay. Now, sometimes they may pay you a day rate while you're out on tour, and then you come back to their shop and you work in their shop and they pay you an hourly rate. But either way, it shakes out. Either way, it will shake out for you, because one, you're doing the work you love and you're moving forward. You know that it's an entry point into this. I'll tell you this, my first tour was $500 a week. Okay. And how I negotiated this was the exact way I'm telling you guys. They said, what's your rate? And I said, well, what's in your budget? Because at the time I was doing like local backline work. I was working hourly in the shop, and I would get sent out for $150 a day as a local backline tech. And they were like, well, we're willing to pay $500 a week plus $25 a day per diem. Now, it was a 6-month tour. We did not come home for 6 months. I know that's crazy, but that is true. And so it was 500 times 4. So that's $2 grand in a month times 6. Okay. That's 12K, in this over the 6-month period, plus the $25 a day per diem. Let me just do the math on that real quick, assuming it's a 30-day month. So it is 25 times 30, $750 a month times 6. All right. That's 4,500 of cash, 4,500 bucks of cash, plus 12,000. Now, I brought home that first tour $16,500. Now, of which I did not spend any of it because I was out on tour. That's not a lot of money, obviously. However, I also at the time was married, and my spouse was making plenty of money to cover everything. And this is what I'm talking about, getting that spousal help. So you can really do this. Now, hey, listen, I was contributing $2 grand a month to our life, plus the per diem that I would basically hardly ever spend because they feed you on the road and all of that stuff. And so it became enough. All right. My second tour, I was asked the same thing. What's your rate? And I said, well, what's in your budget? I always like to do that because it throws it back on them. You know, even if a company asks you on an application what your rate is, what you need to make, know your numbers, okay? It's important. Know your numbers, because when you know your numbers, you can go in there and tell them what your minimum is and what you really need. That's the key here, because it's really about what you need, because there's not really an industry standard, okay? There's no industry standard, and it's about what you need. And that way you can fill out the application. Now, don't be afraid to fill these applications out and put in your monthly real need, because at the end of the day, it's project by project, relationship by relationship, and it's all negotiable, even in a company. Like, what I mean by that is, let's just say that you go to reach out to like 4Wall or something like that, or Live Nation or whatever it is, and you fill out the application. They say, well, what's your expected income? You can tell them your minimum need. So you make sure that you're at least transparent with your need. Okay. Like, hey, I need this. If I made this, I'd be so happy to get started here, because this is a starting point, right? And then when you build relationships, things like that, new projects come up, especially if you go in there open to building the relationships and things like that, then you can negotiate a new rate than just what you're applying for at that time. because a project comes in, and I've said this before on coaching sessions, but let me just share that here in the Money Masterclass. The budgets, okay, these show budgets, the tour budgets, they're preset, all right? The management will say, hey, tour manager, can you create a tour budget of everything that we need to send this show down the road? So the tour manager will create a tour budget. They oftentimes look at the previous tour budgets and see production costs and stuff. The tour manager will submit that to management. Management will kind of go back and forth to get a good, make sure that it's accurate, and they can really work with that budget because the management is very savvy, even if it's a new tour manager. So they agree on a tour budget. Then the tour manager, if they hire a production manager, there's like a staff budget and all of this, that, and the other. Everything is budgeted. And so there is a window of negotiations here. Now, obviously, in negotiations, these tour managers and production managers will certainly want to get the best deal possible, but the best deal is not necessarily the cheapest crew, okay? It's about value, and I'll talk about the money exchange here in a minute. And so it's the same thing with these companies. So let's just say that it's like, okay, well, we have a video production budget of $30,000 that includes the tech, all right? Then they go to their four-wall or one of the vendors, Solo Tech or something, and say, hey, we've got, we want to hire, or we want to get this video package and we need a tech. Well, then they say, okay, great. Well, Solo Tech may throw a budget out there or an estimate of what all the gear needs in their tech. Solo Tech is going to overestimate for their tech. They may throw the tech at like, $700 a day, knowing that they could probably get a video tech for $400 or $500 a day or $700 a day, which is pretty good money, right? And so there is a negotiation window there. And if you have value that you're bringing to the table, you know what you need, you know that you can say, hey, I need more, then they may shift some budget around to afford you, or there's already budget in the predetermined budget for the project, even in these companies I'm talking about. Another example is, let's just say you go to work with, Eighth Day Sound or Claire Brothers Sound Company, and they want to put you out on a tour. They may already have a standard rate for you. Okay, they may say, hey, we can pay you, $250 a day, or we can pay you $400 a day. But as you start to grow your career and get some more negotiation power because you up your skill set, you up your credibility and your validity, and the relationships are deeper, and you understand what I'm trying to tell you here, that there's predetermined budgets, they've probably actually budgeted $1,000 for the tech. And you, if you're worth it, can say, hey, I really need, $700 a show. And then you can negotiate that value because the budget's there. Or if they really want you, because sometimes the tour may want you, the tour may say, no, we want this front of house engineer, like period, we want this front of house engineer. And the audio company might just have to go, okay, cool. Well, they're over our estimated cost that we sent them, but we'll pull the budget from some other part, maybe like the gear, some extra cables, the backup console or something. Like, we'll figure some way to afford this tech in the predetermined budget. Same thing as a tour manager. Let's just say that you get hired as a tour manager, and the management, they've already budgeted the tour. Well, there's a tour manager budget in there. You might say, hey, what's in your budget? The tour man or the management that you're negotiating with might say, well, we can afford X. Now, they're not going to come to the top of their budget because management won't do that. They want to be able to save money, but they also want you. And they may say, well, this is really what we have for the budget. This has actually happened to me before. And I would say, and I actually did this. They said, well, all we can really afford is $2,500 a week. And I go, okay, well, look, the tour manages this. It's already pre-advanced. Like, you got to ask these questions. Is it pre-advanced? Okay, like, what's my work? Like, what's my objective here? Okay, so the hotels and logistics are already booked. I'm not having to do a bunch of that stuff. Okay, well, I'm really needing like $3,500 a week. Now, I might not have capped out their budget. Maybe I have, but in this instance where I said this to this to this management company. It was for a smaller band. They needed me for a 2-month Europe run to tour manage. I said, well, really, I'm at $3,500 a week. They're like, dude, like, honestly, Kenny, like we cap out at 3. Now they started the negotiations at 2,500. And they're like, honestly, man, like we capped it out at 3. I don't even know where I would pull the extra $500 a week from, you know? And so that's where you have to decide, is this worth it for you? For me, it wasn't worth it. So I said no to the gig. Thank you so much. Like, if you could come up with the extra money, I would be happy to do this. I actually just had the same situation with this huge stadium act that I said no to. I just got asked to do this huge stadium world tour. And I said, look, in order for me to leave the Jonas Brothers and leave home from May to October, which is what it would have been, I need, I quoted him some really silly number, you know. Let's just say, I'll tell you what the number was. It was like, I needed at least $4,500 a week just to take care of the one guitar player. Like, if you want me to leave the brothers, like, you're going to have to pay me that much. And they were like, oh, shoot, our budget is $1,000 less a show. And this is a huge, huge band. I go, well, to be honest with you, that's what I'm making with the brothers. So it doesn't make sense for me. I'm so grateful for the opportunity, but unless you paid me that much, you can't have me, you know? And so you have to know your numbers. You have to know your why, you know? You have to really know what you really need and why you need it, you know? It probably 5 years ago, I would have just said yes, because that was where I was at for that gig. But now things are different. And so that's what's important, to really know your numbers and know why you need it and so on. You got to consider the non-monetary compensation. You have to. Like, for me, taking that huge tour, I'll just tell you what the huge tour was. It was Def Leppard. I was just offered Def Leppard. And look, I don't have anything to prove as a guitar tech, especially as a guitar tech, because I've done some mega gigs, huge gigs. I've done stadium tours. I've done, big stuff. I'm on a big gig right now. I don't have anything to prove. So there was none of that, like, ego scratching or gig credibility for me. That wasn't a non-monetary compensation anymore. Maybe, 5, 6, 7 artists ago, it might have been oh shoot, I'm at the top, but I'm already at the ceiling. So that wasn't a consideration for me. Leaving home and all that stuff, like, they were only going to probably 2 countries that I'd never been. Otherwise, I've been to all the countries. So the travel wasn't a consideration for me. But in the early days, I've literally made money negotiations because of travel. When I was with Trace Atkins, I got an opportunity to go work full-time with Luke Bryan, okay? And Luke Bryan now is doing stadiums, but back then he was just on a tour bus. Like, he had just got his first tour bus. I was Luke's tech. I was doing some sub dates while I was still full-time with Trace Atkins. And Luke wanted me, this new guy, Luke Bryan. And at the time, I didn't necessarily want to go back in my career, but I felt like this guy was probably going somewhere. I really loved his vibe, and I was like, this could be cool. But it was going to be a step back in pay. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to probably take this gig. So I go back to the Trace Atkins people, and I said, hey, listen, I'm going to go work with this new country singer. His name's Luke Bryan. And I really appreciate my time here. I'd been with Trace Atkins for 2.5 years at this point. And I put my notice in, a 30-day notice in with the production manager. Trace comes to me and says, Ken, it sucks. I heard you're leaving. It sucks because we were about to go to Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kuwait to do a whole bunch of USO shows. We're going to do a show on the USS Enterprise, like all this really cool travel. Well, to me, that's what this lifestyle is about. It's what this career is all about, is really getting to experience tour life to the fullest. And that's something really interesting, unique. I didn't know if I would ever get an opportunity like that again. And so I went back to the production manager and said, hey, man, can I take my notice away? Because I want to stay, And even though Luke Bryan was offering me a salary position, probably security, turns out he ends up, doing all the things that he said he was going to do back then. With his career, I could have been set, but it didn't matter. That's the type of non-monetary compensation I'm talking about. There's a lot of that stuff. Where are you traveling to? What type of gigs? The quality of tour. Per diem, some of that stuff matters, because some of these tours, International, they'll pay you $75 a day. Imagine going to do a 2 or 3 month Europe tour, making decent pay, but then on top of that, you're making $75 a day. You're barely spending it because they feed you 3 times a day. That's a lot of extra money. You know, that's a monetary compensation, but like, then there is the experience, the people, the relationships. You have to consider these things in your negotiations. It's critically important. It's not just about like, okay, well, what's the responsibility of the role versus for the work? It's like, man, I will take less pay, and I've done this. I've taken less pay initially for growth. I choose growth over monetary pay every single time because it's always paid more in the long run. I understand I'm building a career, and I'm not just trying to get a gig that pays the most. Okay. In the early days, when I was a stagehand, I had a lot of people in the union try to tell me to come to the union, man. They're going to be paying me $5 more an hour. And I'm just like, yeah, but they're also not going to let me grow very quickly. They're going to limit my growth. They're going to stifle me. They're going to tell me I have to apprentice and then, you know, move on through the ranks. And then maybe in 5 years, I can like grow. I'm like, no, not interested. You have to consider these things when it comes to your money because we're building a career here, right? Because again, there's no real industry standard with any of this stuff, but your own. The Warp Tour stuff. If you ever watch one of the career chats with Carl Hardin, he talks about being in the Warp Tour. The Warp Tour, very hard. The boot camp of touring. I'm not even sure if they do Warp Tour anymore, but he did it for very little pay, but a ton of growth, a lot of growth. Sure, he could have stayed with his, you know, salary job back in Maryland or whatever, where he grew up, and he was the assistant manager of a store, and he was making all that good pay. But understand that that's not what we're trying to do here. We're not just trying to pay bills. We're trying to build a career. And sometimes you want to understand that pay negotiations is directly based on growth. I've literally said yes to gigs and then asked how much it pays because that's sometimes where you want to lead with. It's like, oh, I want to be a part of that. How much does it pay? Perfect. It's enough. And these days, I'm at a level, and you guys will get to this point where you're at a level where you can say, I'm in, assuming that they're going to be able to afford you. Because most of the time, the people that I get that call me for gigs, they pretty much assume, or I can assume that they know that my starting rate is not cheap, okay? And you guys will get to this point. Now, the Def Leppard thing, it was just what it was. And I honestly went stupid high. And I went stupid high because I understand that I've done stupid high these days, and it's worked because of who I am, because of my relationships, because of the value at which I bring to the table, and all that stuff, which is what I want to talk about right now, is called the money exchange. Okay. The money exchange. Now, when they say, and there's all these budgets and all of that stuff, like the gig I'm on now, I asked for something pretty dang high. Okay. They've not paid this much for my position before. All right. Why they would try to afford me in this position is because of the value at which I bring to the table. Here's what the value exchange is. Okay. I'm going to use something as an example. I've got this water bottle. Let's just say that this water bottle is $50. All right. Now, if you gave me $50 for this water bottle, how much do you think this water bottle is worth to you? $50, right? Wrong. It's actually worth more than $50, because if this bottle was worth $50 to you, you would have just kept the $50. You already have the $50. Why would you spend $50 for something that's worth $50 to you? That's just not the way we spend our money, and they don't spend the money that way either. This is worth more than $50 to you. That's why, and that's what the money exchange is all about, the value exchange. It's an exchange of value. For me, giving you this for $50, I would say, yes, the $50 is worth more than the bottle to me. but to you, it's worth more than the 50 you've paid for. The reason why that matters is the same reason why I was able to negotiate the rates that I'm in now, is because I am worth more than the money that they're paying me. I'm not worth just the money that they're paying me. They're getting a deal for me, so they're willing to exchange that type of value. That's what I'm talking about with these negotiations. There's always a negotiation of relative to value. If they really want you, they're going to afford you because they understand the value at which you bring to the table. Now, in these days, before, and I don't know when you're going to be watching this money masterclass in the future, if you're watching the replay, things are changing when it comes to quality and quantity of CREW. But it wasn't very long ago that this past year and the year before that, as the industries came back, they've been paying dumb, stupid rates for relatively low value people, and paying really good rates for people of value that are bringing a lot to the table. Now, understand that there is no set standards. I know I've repeated this, but I'm going to repeat this again. There's no set general standards. Tour rates vary from $150 a day or $500 a week, like my first tour, all the way up to, I know tour managers that are literally making $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a week. Now, don't get me wrong, they're definitely earning it because it's a 7-day-a-week position, but that's what you're up against. So in these early stages, you definitely do not need to hem and haw about making your, a 4-hour mini or a 6-hour mini or $10.50 an hour, or 15 or 20 bucks an hour. Like all of this stuff, there's so much more non-monetary compensation as you're building your career than you can ever imagine. And sometimes you're going to catch yourself in the future when it comes to negotiating your money, where you will, and I hope you do this being a Crew Coach member, where you will focus on growth always first before the monetary income, because it will always be enough. And the reason why I demand so much money now that I never did before was because, one, I know my numbers, I know my need, I know what my current value is, I know what the top guitar tech budgets are in the business because I've been a tour and production manager and I've paid them. And so I know what I can ask for them. And I also, again, really put a lot of value in what I bring to the table, because when someone hires me, they don't just get me restringing and setting up guitars and doing guitar changes. They get my Rolodex. They get my vendor contacts. They get my everything. Like I bring a lot of value to the table. There are times where artists have hired me and they've paid me my good rates, and then I've negotiated instrument and endorsement deals and gotten them, 10 grand worth of free guitar strings and drum heads and drumsticks and picks and cleaners. I've gotten them some bands, I've gotten them hundreds of thousands of dollars of instrument endorsement deals because of the value that I bring to the table. So sometimes it's way more than just the role itself. And so you have to be cognizant as you go and understand how this works, the difference of the value exchange. If they're going to be offering you $2,000 a week or $1,500 a week, which is not bad pay, by the way, guys, then just know that it's because they feel like you're worth more than the $1,500. Make sense? Now, I want to end it with this. Hopefully this has been an awesome class so far. I love talking about this stuff and about values and rates and the money of things, because it's way more than just roll for income. There's so much existential understanding. There's so much emotion behind money. There's so much weight to it, as we've talked before. And it, in the early days, is enough. As you get up here and longer into your career and further into your career, it becomes more than enough. More than enough. If we were just doing this for the money, then we could find way more than 100K or 75K or 60K or 50K or 150K a year. We can get that. I mean, you can go get a sales job and make $500,000 a year if you wanted to. You know, you could go get some secure job that pays all of your bills, gives you benefits, gives you 401k and all of that stuff, which by the way, a lot of these artists, especially the companies, but a lot of like in the country world, they're paying 401ks and salaries and stuff, you know. I'll tell you this, I remember I got offered Luke Bryan full salary years later. This was when Luke was at his top. They called me back, and I was already out of the country world. Actually, I was about to be out of the country world. They tried to steal me from the band Perry, and they offered me $65,000 a year, full benefits, 401k, the whole deal. And of course, I turned it down because that's just what I value in my career and in my touring crew experience of it all. Because it's not just about the money. There's so many other contributing factors. If it was about the money, then I could get that. I could make way more money than I do now, making a 6+ figure income. Here's a for instance, and I actually did this, okay? I call this the $10 burrito. If you've never heard me talk about the $10 burrito, you're gonna hear it now. It's a really great thing to end this masterclass on. I call this the $10 burrito, okay? This is from experience, by the way. So imagine this, okay? If I told you a way that you could make $250,000 a year working for yourself, all right? Take home a 6-figure income, working for yourself, you would be done by lunchtime, right at the end of lunchtime, 5-6 days a week. Would you do it? Most people are like, heck yeah, I would do it, okay? Well, here's the thing. Let's just say you were to go to Costco or Sam's or BJ's and you buy the ingredients to make like California burritos, okay? You make like a bean vegetarian one and you make like a chicken one, big thick burrito. You wrap it in aluminum foil, put it in a brown paper bag. You could even get like a little small bag of chips, maybe even offer a little bottle of water. All of this stuff tallied up, and you could sell these for $10. You go to office complexes, schools, colleges, you wait till they come out for lunch and you're standing there, you're like, hot, fresh burritos, $10. I mean, you go to Chipotle and you're spending $10 just for the base meal, and then it adds up to 15 or so, right? So $10 burrito, and you were to sell these for $10. Now you go to an office where they've got, 1,000, 800, 2,000, 3,000 employees in this office building. You're going to sell these out quick. Let's just say that you got a $10 burrito and you sell it for, or you sell 100 of them, just 100 of them, okay? That's $1,000 in one day, all right? You start making them in the morning, you drive down to the office building, you sell them by the end of lunch, all right? 100 burritos, that's $1,000 in one day, all right? Now, chances are you could organize it with 5 or 6 different office buildings where you come one day a week to each one, sell 100 burritos out like that. I mean, some of these companies have hundreds of employees, so they're gonna be bummed out that it's only 100. But let's just say, for the sake of easy math, you sell a $10 burrito and you sell 100 of them in a day, all right? Now, let's just say that you did this 6 days a week, okay? You're ambitious. We work all the time anyways, but you do this for 6 days a week. That's $6,000 in a week. Now, let's just say this, you do this all month. That's 24 grand in a month, okay? Let's just say you're here in Florida and you're able to do this year round. Now, chances are really in every major city you can do this year round, especially if you negotiate with these office buildings to sell burritos one day a week. You get 6 of them, right? So let's just multiply this out by 12. That's $288,000 in a year. Now, let's cut it in half for a food permit, overhead. That is a 6-figure income, 144 grand, working for yourself, being done by lunch, just selling $100, $110 burritos. There you go. There's you in a simple way to make a 6-figure income, working for yourself, selling burritos. But here's the problem with that. You have to give enough damn about burritos and what you're doing and why you're doing it to want to stick it out through the hard times, through the rainy days, the snowy days, through the irritating people, through messing up the kitchen, just all of it, right? There's all this hard, right? Because building anything, creating anything, making money, they call it labor for a reason. They call it work for a reason. Because it's work, it's hard, right? You have to give enough damn about what you're doing generally to want to even do that. And by the way, if you did 200 or 300 burritos at these office buildings and stuff, do the math, it's a lot of damn money. This works, by the way. I used to do this with pizzas when I was a teenager. While I was working as a stagehand, me and a friend of mine we negotiated a relationship with the local Little Caesars. They gave us t-shirts, the car topper, and hot bags. We would come in at like 6 in the morning before they started making their pizzas. We would buy the pizzas at like $3 and $4, and we would sell them for $6 and $5. We'd make a couple of bucks a pizza. We'd come home, we'd split the money, and I would make a couple $100 a day selling pizzas. We went downtown Atlanta. We would go to like Clark Atlanta, Morehouse, all these different colleges. We would in office buildings. We would stand out. They would come out for lunch, and we'd be like, hot pizzas, $5, and we sold them out every single time within minutes. Every single time. We would bounce around so as to not saturate the market. It got to the point where people were looking forward to seeing us. I know that this works. This is not just some hyperbole. I've literally done this with pizzas, not burritos, but burritos would probably be much easier to deal with and much easier to do than pizzas. But you get my point here. You have to give enough damn about it, because if this was just about the money, if this was just about paying bills, there's you a way that you can make a 6-figure income. But that's not what this is about. There's so much more than just making money in this career. It is about all of it. It's about why you're doing it, what you really need out of your career, out of your life, and you're going to be making money moves, or you'll be making career growth moves that affect your money. So understand that that's really at the core of this masterclass that I really want to get across. It's not just about understanding how much money you need every month, what your real numbers are. You've done your math, right? I want you to do your math so you can remove that emotional weight. I want you to get your priorities in check. You know, you have to get your priorities in check so you can really replace your current income with event income completely. I know some people here in Crew Coach, they've finally been able to do that, where they got their full-time event job and they left their other side jobs, their JOBs, okay? You want to be able to get your support from either, reducing your nut by getting roommates, or your spouse stepping in to say, hey, this is us together. You don't have to just take this on yourself. We work together here. So you can really make the work for you. Understanding that even at the entry levels of stagehand work, local work, merch seller, entry level into a company, you can make enough to cover everything, to get the experience that you need, because that's what you're after. It's more than just a paycheck. You're after the experience. So one day you can continue to grow and grow and grow, right? It's really knowing that when you start to venture in to the touring side of things, when you start to negotiate with management companies or whatever that is, to know what your day rate is based upon what you've made, to understand the non-monetary compensation, to know that there's tour budgets and that everything's negotiable based upon you knowing yourself, how much there's in their budget and what you're willing to go out for, right? Knowing that there's no real industry standard, that the tour rates and per diem and all of that, it's more money than you can imagine. And you don't even spend it most of the time. And understanding the value at which you actually bring for $1. It's not that they're paying you $1,000 and they feel like you're worth $1,000. They actually feel like you're worth more than $1,000. That's why they're giving you the $1,000. Because you're worth more than the money they already have, right? And if this was just about the money, then you could go and do the $10 burrito. All right, y'all. That's what I got for this money masterclass here for career building and crew coach towards the touring crew career. I hope this was helpful for you. And until next time, go get them.